Good afternoon, everybody. Perhaps good morning if you're on the west coast of this country. Welcome in to a Thursday night football edition of Establish the Show. Fun showdown game tonight, AFC East style, with the Bills and the Patriots. Joined as always by Showdown King himself, Cody Main. Cody, how are you?
I am good. It is a fun slate. I like these
Yeah, I think it's
Josh
fun.
Allen slates. I like the Bills slates. A ton of fun and some injury related stuff will keep things interesting on tonight's slate as well. So really
Yeah,
excited to get into it with you.
agreed. And the Bills need this game really, and obviously the Patriots are still playing their tails off. Josh Allen has historically been very good against the Patriots, but I don't think it's going to be that simple tonight. This game is in New England, if I'm right about that, right? This is
Yep.
in Foxborough. All right, so let's start there. Macro wise, doesn't seem like many people are going to be going for 5-1 New England lineups, which does make sense. Obviously, it would be pretty surprising to see a Patriots onslaught, but at only 3%, I think it's something you consider in an MME set. Take us through some of your macro thoughts here.
Yeah, and the roster construction table that you guys see on the screen right now, that, as I'm looking at it now, I think this is going to be more representative of some of the single entry, 3-max, smaller field type stuff that I'm playing. But if you look through and if you just run an optimizer, if you go to thesolver.com and run the ETR optimals, you're going to see a lot more 1-5 New England stuff, 2-4 New England stuff than you would maybe expect, given how these offenses project to interact and given the game total and the spread and everything. But there's a lot of value on the New England side, and we'll get into the viability of some of that value. And I think that because of that, in those larger fields where more of the users are optimizing, you talk about the 150s, the lottos, even the $3, $1, 20 max type stuff where there's going to be more optimizers in use, you probably will see the 1-5, the 2-4s come up in utilization just because it's going to try and funnel in some of that New England value. And, we'll get to that point and see how much we like that value. But I do think in the larger fields, you can make a case that the 4-2 and 5-1 Buffalo heavy lineups would actually be a little bit underowned.
Yeah, it seems that way, right? I mean, even I know you're saying this might be more optimal for 3-max, but 25% 4-2 Buffalo seems a little light for me about what I would be targeting, I think. I guess it's and we'll get into it right now, but I'm guessing a lot of it is construction and price wise on the New England side, why 3-3 will be so popular.
Yeah, and the other thing, just off the front, before we get into the specific plays on this slate, the salary is tight, and we'll talk about, again, the value that we keep alluding to here, the viability of it all. But I think that this is a slate where we haven't really seen this in recent showdown slates, where I think there have been more punt options in play, even more mid-tier value in play on this slate because of the way these offenses project to interact. I think there's just less of that value we can get comfortable with. And that is going to make salary tight, particularly if you want to get into some of these expensive options that, we all want to.
Yeah, agreed there. Great point. All right, so let's dive in at quarterback. Obviously, couldn't have two more different quarterbacks if you ask me here. Josh Allen, obviously the best overall play on the slate from a ceiling perspective, is really in his own class or, a very elite class as far as upside in the league quarterback wise. And then going against Mac Jones on the other side, someone who's had a lot of struggles this year, did look better last week, though. How are you handling quarterback here? 74 total percent on Josh Allen. Honestly, seems a little low to me. Curious what you think.
Yeah, I sent out the tweet half joking that said either my ownership projections are wrong or Josh Allen is going to be criminally underowned as a captain. And that probably funnels through to flex as well. And part of it just comes down to the fact that I just don't know how much salary we're going to have. And I actually think at 12-2, the slate's highest priced player, this is probably as high as Josh Allen's been all season in Showdown. He's still kind of a value because of the raw projection that we have on him. So the way that I'm looking at this, if Josh Allen is truly going to be 19.6% owned in captain, that is an absolute smash. We just don't get these spots with Josh Allen that low owned on Showdown slates. And I think part of it is just the construction of the slate as a whole. He's played 2 primetime Showdown slates this season, has been 34.2% and 24.7% owned respectively. Like the last time we've gotten Josh Allen below 20% captain ownership was a slate back in 2021 with the Chiefs when we had, Tyreek and Kelsey and Mahomes and all these other options in play. I don't think there's that many people in play tonight that can rival Josh Allen's ceiling to keep him at 19.6% owned. So I have a sneaking suspicion that is going to come up, especially as we get into some of this value, and maybe we can talk ourselves into some of these cheap guys. But man, if there's any way that holds, I think that is just an absolute slam dunk.
I agree. I totally agree with that. But I don't have much to add. I mean, I think you lock
Yeah.
him in cash. I would consider locking him in tournaments. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but I would definitely consider it. And then on the other side, you have a 9,400 quarterback, cheap for Showdown, 46% total ownership. And, if you're playing into the scenario where the Bills get up big, maybe this game goes over the 43.5. I think there's a lot of situations where Mac Jones can find himself optimal tonight. So how are you handling Mac Jones here?
Yeah, I'm really trying to build a bull case for Mac Jones. And if I think maybe Josh Allen's ownership comes up, I do think Mac Jones's ownership in tournaments, large and small field, will come down. And that's just a product of the players that he's priced around. You can get guys, we'll talk about Ramondre Stevenson is everyone's favorite Patriot to roster tonight. It's going to be tough to fit all these guys in there. So I am trying to build the bear case for Mac Jones. And I think one part of that is that Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a permanent fixture in this backfield. He's been a really good pass catcher, a really good safety valve for Mac Jones. Jacoby Myers, after missing a majority of last week's game when Mac Jones erupted, is going to be back in the lineup tonight for, supposedly a full complement of snaps, we hope. And this Buffalo Bills defense is very good, and they're going to get back some pieces tonight. I know they'll be without Von Miller. They're going to get some pieces back tonight that's going to make them even more formidable in my mind. But teams have been choosing to pass against them, though they've been a good pass defense. So I think maybe we could see the pass rate over expected elevated a little bit tonight for Bill Belichick, especially after he just saw his young quarterback go out and ball out against a Vikings defense that is much less formidable. But I think you could still see an elevated pass rate here. And at 9,400, you have some really low-owned Patriots pass catchers that you might not be excited about, but they kind of facilitate a unique roster construction. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to talk myself into Mac Jones in tournaments as kind of just playing this game as more of a back and forth affair than some might expect.
Last 3 games, the Bills have been up 30 points, 23 points, and 25 points. And 2 of those games were against the Lions and the Browns. So it's not like we're talking about these world beater defenses. I agree. Offenses. I agree. They're getting some good defenders back here. But when I think the Bills, I still think that they're a really stout run defense. And I think just going to Mac Jones when the Ramondre Stevenson will be more popular. I'm assuming I haven't even looked at ownership yet. We'll get there in a second. And is more expensive. I think it's just a way to flip it on its head a little bit. I think I like Mac Jones actually quite a bit here on the slate. And also, maybe he turned a corner last week, threw the ball 39 times, had 26.28 DraftKings points, 380 yards through the air. Like, that was against a Vikings defense on the road. You've been able to throw on the Vikings a lot this year, but the game environment could become similar if this game plays up in pace. So
exactly. And I think that's why you can talk yourself into getting excited. And at 9,400, he doesn't even need to duplicate the 26.8 DraftKings point performance he had from last week. And even if he comes close to that, we're going to be doing backflips at this projected ownership and this price tag.
Agreed. Let's talk running backs. We just mentioned the aforementioned Ramondre Stevenson, one of the few cases where you see a skill position player more expensive than their quarterback. And we're seeing a lot of ownership, 66% total ownership, 15% captain. Obviously benefited greatly by Damian Harris being ruled out here. And I just mentioned how stout the Bills' run defense is. I don't know that matters so much for Ramondre, given how involved he is in the pass game as well. How are you handling the really chalky and expensive Ramondre Stevenson here?
Yeah, I think Ramondre Stevenson is a lock in cash games. I'm trying to work through teams now to avoid some of this value that we're going to get into next. But I think that you can make a case for Ramondre at captain in cash games. I think you can make certainly a case for Ramondre in flex, but I think he is a lock in cash games. It does get a little bit more concerning at that ownership in small and large field tournaments, just given the fact that if I want to start with Josh Allen, who I do, if I want to start with Ramondre Stevenson, who I also like, then I'm starting to funnel into a lot of ownership, a lot of salary, and I'm leaving myself kind of constrained in the rosters that I can build around it. So it's a tough fade to make because the role is so elite without Damian Harris. We just saw it last week. Damian Harris played 20% of the snaps, but you still had Ramondre out there for almost every short down and distance opportunity. He's going to be out there in long down and distance in 2-minute scenarios, and he's going to get a vast majority of the carries. I know we saw in that week 9 game with JJ Taylor, he kind of stole some there at the end. I don't think this team wants to use JJ Taylor too much in a game that really does matter. But yeah, the role is so sick for Ramondre. I guess if you're hoping for a fade and hoping to come out unscathed, you're hoping that it's just an inefficient game on the ground and he doesn't do too much damage through the air, maybe like an 18 for 80 type of rushing performance and then maybe just a couple of catches. If he doesn't rack up a ton of PPR volume and doesn't find the end zone, you're probably going to be okay with the fade.
So I'm going to come in under the field here. That's where I'm at. I want to play more Mac than the field. I want to play under on Ramondre. I think the Bills do their best to take out Ramondre Stevenson here and make them beat them through the air. And, again, that could be scary because of Ramondre's pass, floor, just general floor. And in cash games, I wouldn't fade it. But in tournaments, 66% fading, I could still have 40% exposure and have a pretty big fade position. So that's probably where I'm going to be. And then also JJ Taylor, only 200. I'd probably play over the field on him there. I don't like the play necessarily, but just trying to, figure out ways to flip it on its head a little bit is where I'm at with Ramondre. Again, I understand great play. But I think I just want to kind of lean into the pass game a little bit more here as a way to be different in tournaments. So,
yeah, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate on the analysis that we just provided here, because you do have to have differing opinions on this, and people are going to play this game differently than you and I might play it. And we've talked about this recently with Jonathan Taylor, with Derrick Henry, and it's such an awesome point that I think we need to keep bringing it up. If you want to have an overweight position on Ramondre Stevenson, and you don't want to play into that 66.2% total ownership, but you still want to get overweight, just play a bunch of captain, right? Like the ultimate bull case for Ramondre is he does rack up a ton of receptions as, the Patriots lead pass catcher really at this point, and he does find the end zone. In those cases, you're probably going to be paid off in a big way at 10-4. Maybe you just have 30% or 45% captain exposure, even though you end up in total right around the field.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I totally agree with you on that strategy. And it's one that, as I've gotten to learn more about Showdown this year, I think is a pretty sharp way to get yourself onto a chalky high floor running back specifically. That's, we're seeing these guys over and over on the Showdown slates. All right, let's talk. How are you going to, any interest? I know you mentioned JJ Taylor a little bit, only 200, obviously no Harris. We're expecting him to fully be the running back too, first of all. Second of all, 11% is not nothing. How, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've gotten a few questions about Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong. We don't really have any big reason at this point to project them for a role, certainly within the range of outcomes that, this team has just seen enough with JJ Taylor, and there's no reason to run him out there as the RB2, but I think we have to project it as such. And I know some people have commented in chat already that 11.1% JJ Taylor has to come up, right? And I think they might be right. Certainly with more of the users using optimizers, it wants to jam that in because it does fit. I think he's a tough click for more casual players, and so it might come in a little bit lower. But he's a guy that just makes all of the cash game roster constructions work, no matter where else you want to go in your lineups because of that cheap price tag. I would just caution that there are plenty of zeros within his range of outcomes. I mean, he had 11 total touches in that week 9 game because he got some in garbage time and didn't do anything with them. So just keep that in mind. I think I want to avoid in both small and large field tournaments, but I think he might just be an evil that we have to be willing to click in cash games to make everything else work.
Fair enough. Before we go to Bills running backs, I'll just take this question quickly. I would prefer no Mac Jones in captain Steve. I'm not ruling it out altogether, but I would negatively correlate that scenario. I do think that you could play into exact game script here. If you're getting the ultimate ceiling case out of Ramondre in a game with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and, all these potential big ceiling guys, I think in that case, he's dominating the offense for New England. And, your Mac Jones ceiling case comes down a little bit in that instance. All right, let's talk Bills running backs here. I, have kind of a 3-man backfield. We saw Nyheim Hines get a little bit more work last week, but James Cook is kind of in there as the RB2, but obviously starts and ends with Devin Singletary for them, who's been, pretty clear RB1 for them all year. I'll throw it to you because I have some takes on their backfield too. But how are you handling the Bills backfield here?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear a differing opinion on this, or maybe just maybe not even an opposing opinion. Maybe you can confirm my beliefs. But Devin Singletary seemed to kind of just slams the door shut on James Cook, slams the door shut on Nyheim Hines, and we feel like this team is committed to bringing in somebody else that can compete for some of these touches, but then over and over and over again, they just keep giving those touches to Devin Singletary. They did it this offseason when they tried to bring in J.D. McKissic. They go out and draft James Cook. They trade for Nyheim Hines. And what do they do after all of this? They just keep giving Devin Singletary the touches, whether it's short down and distance, long down and distance, 2-minute snaps, rushing attempts, routes run. He just leads this backfield in such a big way. And I know Evan in his matchups, Colin kind of questioned the upside and questioned the actual talent of Devin Singletary as a running back, but I think the volume is going to be there. We mentioned how this is a game that matters for the Patriots and why they would want to ride Ramondre Stevenson here over somebody like JJ Taylor. I think the same kind of rings true for Buffalo. I think they're gonna opt to ride Devin Singletary. They showed it last week against the Lions. 78% of the snaps, 64% of the rushing attempts was in a route for 64% of Josh Allen dropbacks. Like they're just not using these other backs enough for me to believe that all of a sudden it's going to flip.
So I agree with you. I think Singletary is the clear, top dog here. I just don't like the matchup at all,
Yeah.
where like the Patriots have been very, friendly against the pass and have really taken away the run game all year in a big way. So what I would do, a couple things. First of all, James Cook had 5 targets last week. I think that's not nothing. So they're putting him in on pass downs a little bit. I don't have the exact numbers as far as snap share and stuff like that, but it's not nothing. And then what I would do too, because Singletary also runs a lot of routes, I would be pairing these guys with Allen more than playing them on their own. And that's kind of how I would try to attack this and just assume that they could be part of my double or triple stacks, because I think the only way these guys are getting there is through the air, as far as from being an optimal standpoint, unless they just completely dominate the game and they'll just compile their way to volume in Singletary in that case. But at 40%, I would be taking a fade position on the solo Singletary play without Josh Allen. But
that's a really good point. And we already know that I like captain Josh Allen teams tonight, and it's going to be really tough to build unique captain Josh Allen teams, because as we'll get to here next with the pass catchers, there's not many of them. This is not a Chiefs situation where we have like 6 or 7 rosterable pass catchers. And I think that a couple of them are overpriced. So including Singletary, including James Cook as, the second or third in Captain Allen teams, second or third pass catcher in Captain Allen teams is a really sharp point.
Yep. All right, let's go to receiver. Let's start on the Buffalo side with this time. Obviously, you see the top 2 guys there in Diggs and Gabe Davis. Diggs is having a fantastic season, much to the delight of our FFPC main event team that is going to be in the playoffs and hoping to make some noise. Something that people always get themselves caught up with is, will Bill Belichick successfully take away someone? Who will it be if they do? I saw someone in chat astutely note wasn't able to do it against Justin Jefferson on Thanksgiving, and you would imagine that would have been the guy that they were trying for. Do you think they can successfully take out Stephon Diggs in this game? And how are you handling 60% total ownership, 12.5 captain ownership on Diggs?
Yeah, I mean, my take is that talent's just going to win out here. Volume is just going to win out here. And this, we know, everyone knows this role for Stephon Diggs is just absolutely sick. Huge target share, huge air yard share, and obviously one of the most voluminous passing offenses as a whole. I did note in the article, and shout out to ESPN's Mike Clay, who does really good stuff with really good work with the wide receiver cornerback matchups. Jonathan Jones did shadow Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson this season. So you point out Justin Jefferson being able to kind of win in that matchup. And I think this is very similar. I think they'll choose to shadow Stephon Diggs with Jonathan Jones, but I don't think that's a matchup that Stephon Diggs can't win. So I imagine that based off of my interest in some of these other options, I'll come in close to around the field, maybe a bit under, because of how much I like Josh Allen. But I think by far he's still the best, best Buffalo pass catcher and best pass catcher in this game. I'm not too concerned about the matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't mind being, I mentioned kind of coming the fade on a Stevenson, 66%, on a Singletary, 40%. I probably wouldn't be fading Diggs just from the amount of Allen that I would play, which is probably a lock. So that's where I'm at. The more interesting conversation is Gabe Davis, right? Who is the ultimate boomer bust asset in fantasy this year. If they do throw a lot of doubles on Diggs, and really try to take him out, we could see a big Gabe Davis night tonight. Still playing, all the other snaps on the outside opposite of Diggs. And I know they have 2 good corners over there in New England, but we've mentioned, they have had teams successfully pass on them throughout the season. So I'm interested in Gabe Davis here at 8K. I think that price will keep ownership somewhat down. He's 800 more than Jacoby Myers. 35% total ownership seems fine to me. I would be interested in Gabe Davis captain lineups as well, because I think when he really explodes, you're going to need him at captain, right? I'm talking like the 122 touchdown type games. So I like Gabe Davis quite a bit here. Curious your takes.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that's why I'm a little bit more okay with coming in around the field, or maybe even a little bit under on Diggs in both flex and captain, is because I do like Gabe Davis a lot. The $3,600 flexibility allows you to do quite a bit coming back. And, if we do think that Jonathan Jones maybe does a little bit of damage and hinders Stephon Diggs's box score success a little bit, I think, the obvious beneficiary of that is going to be the guy on the other side. And New England has allowed the league's 4th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers on that opposite side. So I'm not overreacting to Jonathan Jones. I'm not full fading Stephon Diggs for any reason because of Jonathan Jones, but it does appear that, the opposing side of the field where Jonathan Jones is not located is the one that wide receivers are having success against. So I do like Gabe Davis quite a bit. As I mentioned, the $3,600 will allow you to do a lot on the New England side. And 35.4% total ownership is really nice. I love the 6.0% captain ownership as well. Would love to come in maybe double that in my tournament lineups.
Yep. You want to take this question?
Yes, I think that's fair. I think that's fair, especially because of the price tags. Can they both get there in the same lineup? Absolutely. You could see a 4 touchdown Josh Allen performance with 2 touchdowns coming to each guy. But I think particularly if one of them is at captain, it's just going to limit the other opportunities for the other guy to get there in that same lineup, especially with Diggs at 11.6. Diggs is going to have to do a lot at 11.6. That's probably not going to leave much meat on the bones for Gabe Davis at 8K.
Agree there. And if you're just listening to us, I should have read the question out. We're asking, would you dock either Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs if the other one isn't captain? And I would also, I agree with Cody, put a slight dock on the other one in the captain lineups. All right, let's talk the other Bills receivers before jumping over to the New England side, which is much more nuanced. Isaiah McKenzie comes his big breakout game of the season, kind of the performance we were expecting him to have coming into the year, more consistently with where he was going in best ball drafts by the end of the season. I now am a little bit off him, I think, here at 6,800 tonight. But he's definitely a conversation point. So how are you handling McKenzie and as that true wide receiver 3 role here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can actually speed up the conversation here a little bit. Outside of me trying to intentionally make lineups that are different, I'm a full fade on Isaiah McKenzie.
Cool.
I just have no interest. 25%. He's 10% less owned than Gabe Davis. He's only $1,200 cheaper. I know there's some talk out there about man versus zone coverage and what Isaiah McKenzie can do versus man. I'm not overreacting to that type of stuff. We have an under on his receiving yards tonight at 35.5.
Yep.
It's cool that he blew up last week. I'm sad I missed it on a showdown slate, but 25%, I'm okay to avoid it.
Yep. And then we'll go over to New England. I just want to say Shakir at 200, definitely in play. He's running enough routes there on a solo spot. He's Stoneman as the research, who's putting a bunch of good nuggets in chat there. Shout out to you, research. Is definitely in play, Khalil Shakir. All right, let's talk New England. Jacoby Myers has a really good role. He's consistently earns targets. And I think, as Adam Levitin always says, that is a skill. And I think we have to give him credit in that regard. So 7,200, 40% total ownership about that all seems fine to me. I think he's his own conversation before getting into these second and tertiary Patriots receivers.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see ownership come in where it is on Jacoby Myers. I kind of expected it to come in a little bit lower just based off of the players that he's priced around and all the options up top. I do feel like there is some possibility that he ends up getting squeezed out in some of the smaller field stuff, maybe comes in closer to 30% than 40%. I like it a little bit better at 30%. As you mentioned, definitely a target earner. Only ran a route on 38% of dropbacks last week, but still had a 25% target per route run rate. He is the guy that's going to get targeted in this offense, regardless of who else is out there. So I certainly think we should have some tournament interest in him.
Yeah. And Do, if you're a believer in Do, he's 4 weeks separated from his last double-digit DraftKings point game. He's had 9, 9, and 8 in each of the last 3 games. And I think if they're playing from behind, I really like Mac Jones, Jacoby Myers, bring backs in a 4-2. Now you'd have to get a little weird with what you're doing with your Allen stuff, but I think it's something that you should consider. All right, let's talk these other guys because it's really hard for me to parse through. Nelson Aguilar was the guy you wanted on Thanksgiving, but Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, even Tyquan Thornton, all these guys play. I think it's a max 1 spot for me, but how are you handling these? Unless if you're going Mac Jones captain, you could probably let these guys go up to 2, but it's tough for me to figure out who I want,
Yeah. So in lineups and you can set these rules on the solver. It's a fantastic tool to kind of get the types of exposure you want in the right lineups that you want. In non-captain Mac Jones lineups, I would be a max 1. I think you can up that a little bit to max 2 of this group, and that includes Parker, Aguilar, Bourne, and Thornton. I would also do a max 1 of that group in lineups that already roster Jacoby Myers. This is basically a 4-man rotation of Parker, Aguilar, Bourne, and then to a lesser degree Tyquan Thornton, and he's obviously priced as such at $400. But it's going to be so hard if we expect Jacoby Myers to be out there for a full complement of snaps for multiple of these Patriots pass catchers to get there. And we kind of saw it happen last week because Jacoby Myers was out. But I think at their what I would consider full price tags, given the roles that they're playing, it's going to be tough. If you need a micro take, I think Nelson Aguilar is the best of the bunch, just given that I think his role is the safest with Jacoby Myers back. I think Devontae Parker might be a little bit more impacted by Jacoby Myers being back. And then Tyquan Thornton just isn't out there enough. It's a completely situational role. If you need a direct pivot off of somebody like JJ Taylor in the same price range, I think you can go to Thornton. But again, plenty of zeros within his range of outcomes tonight.
Yeah, all these 200s, and that's why they're 200 or 400, right? Thornton, Shakir, Taylor, all these guys have zeros in their outcome range, but they all should be considered. Parker, I find somewhat interesting. Did catch four targets, but also a guy that has goose eggs in his outcome, right? We saw it against the Jets. I mean, that was a tough matchup, but it's certainly something that is there. I'm with you on Aguilar being my favorite, but not super excited about any of these guys. All right,
these are like great bring back mid-tier options in lineups where you know you're going to get paid off with pretty low ownership, but the range of outcomes is rough, and that's why you're getting paid off with good ownership. But I will be using them. I will be rotating through most of these guys in tournament lineups, I'm sure.
All right, let's talk Dawson Knox here. You made a good comparison between him and McKenzie in your article. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I think you could obviously double those two guys, but you're probably choosing between those as like your tertiary Bills pass target. You're probably choosing between Knox and Knox, pretty touchdown dependent, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I said I won't full fade Isaiah McKenzie, because I will be trying to do some unique stuff with my Captain Allen teams. And I think one way to get really unique with a popular Josh Allen captain is to play McKenzie and Knox. And just maybe Stephon Diggs does get blanked. Maybe Gabe Davis doesn't do quite enough to pay off the price tag. And in those cases, if Allen is still optimal, he's going to have to bring somebody along with him. And it could be these two guys. So I'm not going to completely rule them out. I do think they're a little bit overpriced, both McKenzie and Knox, for their current roles, but I slightly prefer Knox. This is a little bit better matchup against a Patriots secondary that's allowing the league's 8th most DraftKings points per game to opposing tight ends. I think he's got more touchdowns in his range of outcomes as well. So I prefer Knox straight up at basically the same ownership and $600 discount.
Me too. I think he's falling through the cracks a little bit here while McKenzie's getting steamed up from last week. We're only 2 weeks separated from 7 for 70 game for out of Knox. So as much as we say touchdown dependent, you never know if they game plan properly against their outside receivers. We could see more volume coming for Knox. I don't mind boosting him up in my Allen captain lineups. And also I wouldn't mind sprinkling in, Charlie mentioned in chat, I wouldn't mind sprinkling in a Knox captain lineup or two as well. I think it's reasonable, although unlikely for it to be optimal, but at 3%, I think I'd be okay being around the field there.
Yep.
All right. New England's a more interesting conversation, similar to receivers, because we do have two guys here. Johnny Smith, only 1,400, but Hunter Henry exploded in a big way on Thanksgiving, almost had a second touchdown that was called back. So he could have had a really big game, but still had 3 for 63 and did find the box. So, and where it looked like that gap was closing a little bit for kind of the middle part of the season, maybe it's widening back up to Hunter Henry. Where's your interest level on both Patriots tight ends here?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, particularly in like Mac Jones stuff. They're the more likely targets to find their way into the end zone. Hunter Henry is certainly the guy that's going to be out there for more routes. Is right around 71% route participation rate on the season. Jonnu Smith is not out there a lot, 31% of the team's routes this season, but he's getting targeted when he's out there. So it makes me think that there's specific stuff schemed up for him, or he's just a natural enough, gifted enough route runner and target earner to get targets when he is out there. And at the $1,400 price tag, I do suspect that ownership is going to creep up in tournaments because, like JJ Taylor, he makes a lot of roster constructions work. If it gets up to 20-ish%, I would be okay coming in under or fading completely because, I think he ran 9 routes last week. That's going to be tough to pay off that, even a $1,400 price tag, only running 9 routes. So for me, it's close to a max 1 situation here, but I might just dock instead because Johnny was so cheap.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't have much to add, but another guy, one of these cheap guys that goose eggs certainly on the table for Johnny, right? We saw it even last week. It's weird. It's so weird how they've used Jonnu Smith since they've signed him. I know they signed both those tight ends in the same offseasons. Johnny was somebody that we were also excited about as this athletic freak profile tight end guy and just hasn't been able to get it going in New England. Both for role and production. All right, let's talk defense and kickers. Bills D looks like it will be slightly more owned than the Patriots D, but they're also $2,000 more. I don't know. I'm less interested in the defenses than I am the kickers this week, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually suspected the Patriots defense would come in lower when running the ownership stuff today, but because they're 3,200 and because the value on this slate is really ugly, they're going to be owned. And I think optimizers are going to want to funnel them in because they are so cheap. It's rare that we see a defense facing a Josh Allen led offense be this owned, and 17% is quite a bit of ownership on a defense. So I think that ownership could creep up in tournaments and one that I would want to come in underweight on. The Bills are a little bit interesting because I think at 5.2, they'll come in under owned. They're getting some pieces back. I know they'll be without Von Miller, but we've seen, we've seen Mac Jones make mistakes. We've seen Mac Jones take sacks. I do like pairing the Bills up in 4-2 and 5-1 heavy type roster constructions where I'm really heavy on Buffalo and making the Bills defense my fourth or fifth Buffalo piece. So I like that quite a bit, but I'm with you in general. I do like the kickers more. And I think both kickers, Nick Folk and Tyler Bass, make sense in cash games tonight.
I agree with you there. Definitely like both of them. I like Bass quite a bit. I think, if the Patriots defense has success, slowing them down, I think it won't be enough to not put points up on the board at all. Right. So I think his floor is decent. And same thing with Nick Folk. I like them both quite a bit here. All right. Anything else to add before you go flag plans here?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I'll be hanging around in Discord. I think ownership updates are going to be very important. So I would be, if you guys aren't in the Establish the Run Discord, check that out. Check out the site as well in order to get those latest updates. Because again, I think if the Josh Allen ownership comes up, if the Stone minimum punt ownership comes up, it's going to change the complexion of the slate quite a bit. So you will want to be around for those updates prior to lock.
Cool. I'll give you the honors because I had Alec Pierce goose egg on me last week. So
that was rough because it didn't exactly happen how we expected it to. But the Patriots, the Colts pass game kind of did hit in a big way, and it hit in a big way for a couple of our subscribers as well, with the Michael Pittman stuff getting there late, and Matt Ryan I think ended up being in that lineup as well. It was an ugly way to get there, but the Alec Pierce goose egg was unfortunate because I had a little bit of Alec Pierce as well.
Yeah.
We're going to go right back to a boomer bust pass catcher. I've already said that I don't like Isaiah McKenzie. I've already said that I'm not a huge fan of Dawson Knox tonight, but I do like Josh Allen, and I do like this Buffalo passing attack. Jonathan Jones doesn't worry me too much, but it's just enough to think that maybe this is a spot where we get a Gabe Davis eruption. 35.4% total ownership is nice, but even better, 6.0% captain ownership on a guy that has legitimate 50-point upside. We don't need 50 from them tonight. Just give us 100 yards and a touchdown. Gabe Davis, optimal captain tonight at 8K.
Cool. I knew you were going to go there, and it would have been mine as well. So you got a double like there, folks, from
double
both
flag
of us.
plan.
Love Gabe Davis. I'll give you one, though. And the second time I've done this, first time it was only hitting a moderate in an okay way. I'm going to flag plan a quarterback. I'm going Mac Jones as my flag plan here. I think the ownership is too low for what the upside is here. I think they are going to be playing from behind. I think the second half, he'll compile a lot of points here. Even if it's some checkdown stuff, even if that includes Ramondre Stevenson, I just still think it's a way to flip the Patriots side on its head a little bit. I expect this game to actually be competitive. We saw what this offense could do through the air against Minnesota last week, and I don't look at this as too different of a spot. If they can keep him upright, I think that he is a really strong tournament play, and I would be looking at more like 60-70%, I think, in my stuff, if I can make it fit. I haven't met with construction. Just when I look at ownership for what I think could be there, again, I'm not a huge Mac Jones fan. If you guys ever listen to our collectible show, you might know that, but I do think that the hate's going a little too far. Maybe he turned a corner last week. So there you go. There you have it.
I love it.
Cool. There you go. Antoine doesn't think he's going to be in a winning lineup. So take that for what it's worth. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Not sure on the status of a Sunday show, but we'll definitely be back for at least Monday night. Wish you all the best of luck as we have our first December Showdown show tonight. Good luck, everybody.